The executive floor of Northbridge Global overlooked an endless skyline of shimmering towers, where billion-dollar decisions were made with quiet handshakes rather than loud announcements. And every polished hallway reflected years of ambition, hidden beneath perfectly tailored suits. For nearly 18 years, Victoria Hayes had earned a reputation as the company's most trusted director of international alliances, building relationships that no software, contract, or executive could ever replace because people invested in her judgment as much as they invested in the company itself. For almost a year, Victoria had devoted every waking hour to preparing the largest international expansion in Northbridge Global's history, carefully balancing the interests of powerful investors, government officials, and a respected family-owned manufacturing empire that refused to negotiate with anyone they did not personally trust. She believed the final presentation would simply confirm months of careful planning, but fate had already prepared an entirely different challenge waiting just outside the conference room doors. The doors burst open without warning, and a young executive named Lauren Bishop entered with dramatic confidence, introducing herself as the newly appointed Executive Operations Manager whose promotion had quietly followed her father's appointment as chairman of the board only 2 weeks earlier. Carrying an outdated policy binder beneath one arm, Lauren scanned the room with an expression that suggested authority came naturally to her, even though she had not yet spent a full morning inside the company. Instead of asking questions or introducing herself respectfully, Lauren walked directly toward Victoria and frowned at the elegant emerald jacket she was wearing before announcing, "Company leadership should represent modern branding standards, and your appearance violates several presentation guidelines that I intend to enforce immediately." Victoria calmly closed her tablet and replied, "Our clients measure us by integrity, preparation, and results rather than jacket colors. And my attention needs to remain on tomorrow's negotiations because they will determine the future of this organization." Embarrassed that her public criticism had failed to intimidate such an experienced executive, Lauren abruptly declared that Victoria was being removed from her position for refusing to comply with management instructions, expecting panic instead of composure from the woman standing before her. To everyone's surprise, Victoria simply smiled, collected her notebook, thanked Lauren for clarifying the company's new priorities, and quietly walked toward her office, knowing that some victories reveal themselves only after those celebrating to early discover what they have truly lost. Inside her office, Victoria packed only the belongings that truly belonged to her, including a worn leather journal filled with personal observations, handwritten reminders from years of negotiations, and a collection of business cards carrying private phone numbers that had never been entered into the company's database because trust had always mattered more than technology. Before shutting down her computer, she carefully removed her personal notes from the system, leaving every official company document exactly where it belonged. Knowing the files contained facts but none of the relationships, context, or experience that had made those facts valuable. Her longtime assistant, Daniel, stood silently in the doorway with disbelief written across his face before asking, "What will happen to the Horizon Alliance project if you leave today?" Victoria gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and answered, "Every contract is still here, but agreements built on respect exist only in the minds of the people who created them, and no folder can replace years of earned confidence between partners." When Victoria walked through the lobby carrying a single bag, employees quietly stepped aside with expressions of confusion and concern because many of them had learned their profession under her guidance and could not understand why one of the company's most respected leaders was leaving without resistance. Lauren watched from the reception area with folded arms, convinced she had demonstrated decisive leadership, while Victoria simply wished her success and walked into the afternoon sunlight, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any argument ever could. Rather than rushing home, Victoria spent the afternoon in a quiet botanical garden where she wandered among ancient trees and peaceful walking paths, allowing herself to enjoy something she had not experienced in years, an afternoon free from conference calls, emergency meetings, and impossible deadlines. Late that evening, she finally turned her phone back on, only to watch dozens of missed calls, urgent emails, and desperate messages flood the screen as executives, attorneys, and department heads struggled to understand why several international partners, suddenly refused to continue discussions. Among the many messages was one from the company's chief executive officer, who admitted that serious misunderstandings had occurred and pleaded for an immediate conversation before irreversible damage was done, promising that every issue could be resolved if Victoria agreed to return before the upcoming negotiations. Victoria quietly set the phone aside without replying because she understood that respect offered only after someone becomes indispensable again was not genuine respect at all. And for the first time in many years, she chose peace over pressure, while the consequences of Lauren's decision continued to spread throughout the company. The following morning, Victoria received a private call from Jonathan Mercer, the founder of Horizon Industries, who had worked with her for nearly a decade and immediately sensed that something unusual had happened, because she had never missed an important planning session without personally informing him first. After listening carefully to her explanation, Jonathan remained silent for several moments before saying, "If they dismiss the one person who understands both our business and our values, then they have created a problem much larger than they realize." Jonathan invited Victoria to breakfast at a quiet waterfront hotel, where influential business leaders often met away from cameras, and their conversation focused less on contracts than on trust, reputation, and the long-term consequences of careless leadership. When Victoria explained that she had taken no confidential information and intended to honor every legal obligation despite her dismissal, Jonathan nodded with admiration and replied, "Integrity is difficult to find, which is exactly why I refuse to negotiate with people who treat it as optional." Meanwhile, inside Northbridge Global, Lauren attempted to convince senior executives that Victoria had exaggerated her importance. But every hour brought another unexpected complication as overseas partners requested meetings that only Victoria had previously coordinated through years of personal relationships. The legal department discovered that many sensitive negotiations depended on mutual confidence rather than written instructions, leaving experienced executives scrambling to understand agreements that suddenly seemed incomplete despite thousands of pages of documentation. As pressure mounted, the board of directors demanded a full investigation into Victoria's dismissal and quickly learned that Lauren had acted without proper authorization, ignored established company procedures, and misrepresented several conversations in an effort to justify her decision after realizing the seriousness of her mistake. Even those who had initially remained silent began questioning her judgment, recognizing that confidence without experience had placed one of the company's most valuable partnerships in jeopardy. Before leaving the breakfast meeting, Jonathan surprised Victoria with an unexpected proposal by offering her the opportunity to become strategic advisor for Horizon Industries, explaining that his expanding global organization needed a leader whose reputation inspired confidence rather than fear. Victoria smiled for the first time in days, not because she wanted revenge against her former employer, but because she finally understood that losing one position had opened the door to a future far greater than the one she had left behind. Within 48 hours, Northbridge Global's emergency board meeting turned into a brutal examination of every decision that had led to Victoria's dismissal, and the directors quickly realized that millions of dollars had been placed at risk not because of market conditions, but because inexperienced leadership had confused authority with wisdom. Lauren attempted to defend herself by insisting she had enforced company standards, yet every explanation collapsed under the weight of documented evidence showing that she had ignored established approval procedures and acted far beyond her actual responsibilities. The board voted unanimously to remove Lauren from her management position, while several senior executives publicly acknowledged that the company had failed to protect one of its most respected leaders, when she deserved support instead of humiliation. News of the internal shakeup spread rapidly throughout the business community, serving as a reminder that organizations rarely lose their strongest people because of competition alone, but often because they fail to recognize their value until it is too late. Victoria accepted Jonathan Mercer's offer and began building an entirely new international strategy for Horizon Industries, where she was encouraged to lead with experience, honesty, and long-term vision instead of office politics and unnecessary bureaucracy. Former colleagues who had admired her professionalism reached out, one after another, expressing their respect and gratitude for everything she had taught them, proving that genuine leadership leaves a lasting influence long after someone has left the building. Nearly a year later, Horizon Industries announced its most successful global expansion in company history, earning widespread praise for its ethical leadership and sustainable partnerships. While Northbridge Global spent the same period rebuilding damaged relationships that had once come naturally through Victoria's patient work. Looking across the skyline from her new office, Victoria realized that true success had never been about defeating those who underestimated her, but about continuing to grow without allowing bitterness to define her future. As the sun set beyond the city, Victoria closed another successful agreement with a confident smile, grateful that one unfair decision had ultimately led her toward a life filled with greater purpose, stronger partnerships, and genuine appreciation for her abilities rather than empty titles. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.